What's up everybody, we're back to talk about some more Malifaux lore, and this week we're going to go over Captain Dashel of the Guild. So spoilers coming up for all of Dashel's stories, and there'll be a list of those stories in the description down below, in case you want to check them out for yourself. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it around if you know some people who might be interested. And with that, let's get into Dashel. Dashel Barker is officially a captain, but everyone in the guard knows him as their tough-as-nails drill sergeant, and they all refer to him as Sarge. Dashel never wanted to be an officer, as he was proud of the fact that he works for a living, but when he was noticed by Lucius Matheson, who was aware of his fearsome reputation, as well as his lack of ambition, the secretary decided to recruit him. He promoted him to the rank of captain, so that he can more easily reassign him to special projects. These assignments are usually in pursuit of Lucius's own goals, as opposed to the goals of the guild, but Dashel gets a little extra scrip in his paycheck, so mostly he figures it could be worse. The Guild launches an operation to push into the quarantine zone and expand their holdings in Malifaux City. Captain Dashel finds himself on patrol as convict laborers work on building new fortifications. Master Queeg, the Guild's new superintendent of prisons, asks Dashel if he believes the rumors that have gone around about the Governor General. Captain Dashel plays dumb, and knowing that the Governor General has been mysteriously missing for a while, he adds that if the Governor General could have been present for this operation, he would have. Queeg replies that a man of his stature should be present, but that there must be a good explanation for his absence. Dashel had spent most of the afternoon trying to avoid Queeg, but for some unexplained reason, the man had taken a liking to him. Dashel found him unsettling, as he liked to give long speeches to Dashel on various topics, and even implied that he's been using chemical and surgical therapies to help control the prisoner population. Even worse, the prisoners under Queeg's charge were left unshackled and barely guarded, and they seemed to work without complaint, not even stopping for food or water. Dashel liked working for Lucius because he was thick-skinned, but this assignment was starting to get to him. As the operation in the quarantine zone continues, the Guild are soon attacked by a combination of Nephilim and undead creatures. They are quickly overwhelmed, and Dashel finds himself trying to make it back across the river to downtown. He throws his last stick of dynamite at some undead attackers as he realizes that he's almost out of ammunition. He yells to try to rally his men, and notices that he's gotten turned around, and is no longer sure which direction they should be retreating. A large undead bursts out of a building and charges towards the man, but suddenly there's a loud crack from a Guild peacebringer, and the zombie collapses. Dashel turns to find Master Queeg, who asks him if he might be in need of some assistance. Dashel yells for him to join the guard, as several more undead approach one of Queeg's convicts, who is struggling to collect ammunition pouches. Dashel is unable to get a shot to cover him, and the convict continues to focus on the ammunition, even as the zombies attack him. Queeg remarks that they seem to have been able to eliminate their instinct for self-preservation. Dashel shouts at him, asking how many of these convicts he's sent to their death. Queeg replies that he started with about 200 and was down to about half that by the time they left the worksite. Dashel shouts back, ordering him to move the convicts among his men so that they can make their way back to the city, and that if Queeg makes one more speech for the rest of the day, he'll shove his baton down his throat. Lady Justice gets a lead in her hunt to find Nicodem the Necromancer. She brings Dashel and the guard along, and begins setting fire to the mansion where he's hiding out. She tells Dashel to order the guards inside to flush out the rezzers, but Dashel refuses. Lady Justice demands that he do what she says, or else she'll stuff him in a pine box. He turns to her and asks her if she really thinks she can take him, and Lady Justice replies confidently, yes. After a tense moment in the standoff, Dashel finally backs down, and tells her that he doesn't get paid enough to care that much anyway. He raises his voice, and tells the assembled guards that they're going to charge into the burning building to chase out their target. When some of them begin to groan, Dashel tells them that he won't hear any of their complaints, that they're Guild soldiers, and Guild soldiers love to fight. They are to march inside and burn to death while fighting off the zombies, so that Lady Justice doesn't have to get her shoes dirty. With that, he orders them to start moving, and brings up the rear, while yelling at the guards who are moving the slowest. When Lucius hears about a disturbance in the north, he takes Dashel, his scribe, and a handful of lawyers, and they ride a train to Ridley. They make their way out into the wilderness, where entire towns of settlers have been going missing, and they encounter animated puppets. Lucius orders his men to hold them off, while he tries to reason with their leader. He splits off, and Dashel follows him, and the secretary dodges attacks from the puppets, while Dashel follows up and kills them. Lucius takes out a music box that plays a song, and they soon encounter a tall puppet with 4 arms. Lucius speaks to it, and it responds in riddles, and the secretary tells him that he broke his promise to only take children who wouldn't be missed. Collodi replies, explaining that the music suddenly stopped, seemingly trying to justify his actions. Lucius tosses him the music box, and shoots back that he didn't have to kill whole towns of people to hear his music again, and he adds that Collodi has become a liability. The puppet paces back and forth, visibly agitated, and Lucius notices a glow coming from his pockets, and concludes that they must be soul stones that he's using to control the puppets. Lucius lowers his voice, and as Dashel continues fighting off the smaller puppets, he's unable to hear what is said. Suddenly, Lucius takes out his cane sword and thrusts at Collodi, but the puppet nimbly dodges out of the way. He has to fight off several more of the small puppets, and he calls out to Dashel, telling him to cover him and keep them out of his way. Dashel replies, "Sorry, boss," but struggles with the overwhelming number, and Lucius still finds himself surrounded. As he's dealing with some of the other puppets, Collodi attacks him, hitting him in the face and knocking his mask off. He calls to Dashel, who looks at him and sees his mangled and disfigured face, causing him to freeze momentarily. He shakes it off and rejoins the battle, as Collodi approaches again and stabs Lucius in the shoulder. Lucius grimaces and manages to grab the soulstones out of Collodi's pocket and throws them in the forest. He removes his gloves, revealing long claws at the end of each of his fingers, and the other puppets start to slow down as Collodi loses control of them. Lucius advances toward Collodi and yells out a threat to the puppet, before seizing it and beginning to take it apart limb by limb. As he is about to tear the puppet's head off, Collodi speaks, "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down." Lucius responds, "Not everyone," and tears off the puppet's head, squeezing it in his hand until it cracks. He's interrupted by the sound of a voice, and he turns to see his scribe, offering him his mask and a new set of gloves. The scribe warns him that the others are coming, so Lucius makes himself presentable and puts Collodi's head in a bag. He calls out to Dashel, who joins him, and tells the man that he appreciates his skill with his weapon. Dashel nods, and then Lucius adds that he appreciates his discretion in this matter even more. The captain replies, "Sure thing, boss," and Lucius asks him if he would like for him to put in a good word and recommend that Dashel be promoted to commander. Dashel says that he likes the sound of that, and Lucius walks off as his other subordinates approach. Once they're back in the city, Lucius asks Dashel to get some information for him, and Dashel meets him at Lucius's private residence. The secretary is sitting at a table going through some files. Dashel hands him the paperwork, and Lucius thanks him and tells him that soon he'll be calling him commander. Lady Justice returns from an operation, and an office worker bugs her to fill out paperwork and follow other formalities. She gets annoyed, but the man insists, until Dashel approaches and dismisses him. They walk through the Enclave together, and Lady Justice asks Dashel why he didn't send reinforcements to support her operation. He tells her that he didn't get a requisition, and that nothing can be done without the appropriate paperwork. Justice shoots back that her patrols are going missing, and Dr. McMorning is still on the loose, and all he's worried about is paperwork. Dashel replies that he and the guard are not going to come to their rescue every time the death marshals get themselves in too deep, pointing out that there's a manpower shortage. Another office worker approaches them and tells them both that Governor General Marlowe wants to speak with them. They dismiss the man, and then Justice tells Dashel that she's aware of the manpower shortage, and it's not gotten any better thanks to him. They both go to Marlowe's office, and the Governor General greets them, and then asks Lady Justice how her operation went. She tells him that she lost several men, and several others have been injured, and that it wouldn't have happened if Dashel had brought the reinforcements she requested. Dashel points out that he doesn't have a record of the request being made, and suggests that Lady Justice find a new judge to do her paperwork, as catching a bullet in the head has seriously impaired the last judge's efficiency. Lady Justice turns on him, her hand getting closer to the hilt of her blade, and she commands that he will speak of the judge with respect, as he died defending the city from scum, who Dashel can't be bothered to go after, because he doesn't have the right paperwork. Dashel's smile only falters for a second as he sees her hand creeping closer to her blade, but Marlowe interrupts, telling them both to be quiet. When they've cooled off, Marlowe tells Dashel that as a result of his unwavering duty, he is hereby promoted to the position of commander, and he hands him a piece of paper with his new orders. Dashel beams and says that that sounds like a promotion that comes with a pay bump. The Governor General confirms, and then pushes a box across the desk, which causes Dashel to look on confused. He explains that the box contains after-action reports, requisition papers, payroll schedules, and duty lists. Dashel asks what he's supposed to do with them, and Marlowe tells him that they're part of his job now. Lady Justice laughs and tells Dashel that he's gonna have to learn to read. Marlowe then tells Lady Justice that they're stepping up recruitment efforts and that she's going to need to promote a new judge to help organize her ranks. Lady Justice says that she understands and leaves the office as Dashel stares at the box with wide eyes. After another failed operation to go after Dr. McMorning, Lady Justice returns with many casualties. Dashel meets her outside the front gate and tells her that this is not the triumphant return of a hero. Justice tells him that if he's not going to help move the wounded, then he can at least get out of her way. As he watches on, he sees more and more wounded and starts to appreciate the scope of the damage. He asks what the hell happened, and Lady Justice responds, Dr. McMorning happened. She then walks away into the Enclave, and Dashel comments that he hates to say it, but this is what happens when you go after vengeance. The new judge interrupts and disagrees, telling him that this is what happens when evil is allowed to grow in the hearts of men. She then continues moving the wounded, leaving Dashel to think about what she said. He considers it as he looks at the carnage, and then catches up with the judge and tells her screw the paperwork. Next time they have a lead on McMorning, they're sending the full force of the guild against him. Captain Dashel has done a terrible job of staying under the radar. It seems the more he tries to keep his head down, the quicker his career advances. After being promoted to commander, Dashel was tasked with rooting out corruption within his department, and he hates all of the paperwork he now has to do. He prefers to drill his men, and will jump at any opportunity to get back out on the streets and split some skulls. Dashel goes into his office, where two people are being held. He dismisses the guards, and introduces himself to Sheriff Cornelius Bass and his daughter Bernadette. Bass replies that he's no longer a sheriff, and Bernadette asks Dashel why they were arrested. Dashel explains that based on what they've done, he could have done a lot worse, but that he just sent his guards to escort them to the guild, and they only placed them under arrest because they were attacked. Bernadette bares her teeth, and Dashel asks Bass if he thinks he can behave on this side of the breach, because the guild might have work for him. Bass responds that he doesn't want to work for the guild, and that they came here as civilians, and Dashel replies that that's not going to be an option, as Bass knows what is necessary for order. Bass shoots back a correction that he understands the value of law, and Dashel continues explaining that order is what he's after, and is what the contract hounds are lacking. He starts to shuffle around some files, still not being fully accustomed to office work, and Bass asks him why he doesn't just go impose order himself. Dashel replies that he does, and is, but that he spends more time behind a desk nowadays. He finds what he's looking for, and hands a pair of pardons to Bass. The two look them over, and Dashel explains that they will only be good after a few years of service to the guild. Bass asks if their other option is to be extradited back to the United States, where they are wanted criminals, and Dashel confirms, explaining that he can't guarantee their safety on the way back to the train, never mind when they return to the frontier. Both bases agree, and Dashel hands them a map with several contract towns circled on it, and explains that those are the places he wants them to check in on. He goes on to explain that Paul Crockett will be their guide, and that Jonathan Reichert, a former guild executioner who still owes some service to the guild, will also be joining them, as he's more familiar with this side of the breach. After hearing reports of a mysterious murder, Dashel heads to a rich part of downtown and approaches the scene. He sees Nellie Cochran trying to question one of his guards and forces his way in between them, cutting her off. He asks the guard if a man really burned himself alive, and the guard confirms, explaining that he had been preaching fire and brimstone. Dashel asks if anything like this has happened before, and when the guard confirms, he demands to know why he wasn't told. The guard explains that there are so many kooks and crazies in Malifaux that it's hard to tell the difference between the dangerous ones and the run-of-the-mill kooks. Dashel asks him what happened, and he explains that when they arrive, the man was standing on top of a barrel, reading from a book. He turns to pick up the book, but Dashel quickly stops him and tells him not to touch it. The man continues, explaining that when his officers approached, the man suddenly lit himself on fire, killing himself and taking a few of the guards with him. Dashel says that it was an Arcanist, with a look of disappointment, and explains that the Arcanists value their operatives too much for suicide. Then Nellie interrupts, asking who the man was and what the book is. Dashel tells her that it's none of her business, and that he doesn't care about her newspaper, as there's some things that the people shouldn't know. Nellie tries to retrieve the book, but Dashel steps in her way, looming over her, and tells her that she must have heard about the cultists who have been popping up on Earth, and that she should stay out of this for her own good. Nellie replies that the people will want to know more, and she takes out a pen and pad and starts taking notes. Suddenly, the man's body catches fire again, and as the flames rise up, they suddenly turn into a portal. Dashel watches as a tentacled creature comes through the portal, with no face or eyes, but several sets of snapping jaws. The creature consumes the guard, and then turns on Nellie, but is stopped just in time when Dashel smashes it with his axe. The creature struggles and then dies, but Dashel takes a few more chunks out of it just in case. He looks around for more threats, and Nellie thanks him, telling the man that she knows they don't always see eye to eye, but she won't forget what he has done for her. Dashel responds that if she wants to thank him, then she won't write this story. Nellie reluctantly agrees and then walks away, secretly holding the small book. Dashel's new job gets easier, as he gets used to doing all the paperwork and dealing with bureaucracy. He doesn't like it, but the bottle of cognac at his desk and the significant pay bump make his new position worth the hassle. When the Burning Man arrived, Dashel was one of the least prepared, as many of his patrols get attacked by the cultists, and others decide to join them. The commander decides to order some of Marlowe's men to take care of the paperwork, as he is the most qualified to prepare the defenses. The Governor General is too busy to say anything, so he trades in his pen for an axe, and spends his first day busting heads and yelling at his men to keep them in line. Well, that's it for Dashel. It's funny, he's one of those characters that are kind of always there in the background, but he doesn't take a prominent role in most of the narrative. I'm wondering if that's going to change now that he's getting more directly involved in the situation with the Burning Man. It's also interesting to see him clashing with some of the other guild masters, and I wonder if we'll see him and Lady J team up to try to go after McMorning again. I hope they make good on that story arc. It's interesting to me because he's one of the few characters in the stories who's just a regular guy. No special powers, not particularly smart, just a big dude who likes to punch things and doesn't ask a lot of questions. I feel like that's an archetype that gets overused in a lot of other fictions, but we really don't see a lot of it in Malifaux. But anyway, drop a comment below, let me know what master you want to see me do the next video on. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.